your boy Dixon, about to react to NYC trashes migrants' meal while families trap. Let's get to it.
New York City pays over $30,000 a day for meals that are supposed to feed asylum seekers living in this hotel, but instead those meals are winding up in the garbage.
Yeah.
Why is that happening?
This is all food. This is fresh. Wow. This is good food.
Demand at a food pantry in the Bronx is greater than ever before. But city budget cuts have limited the amount of people the pantry is able to help.
More than 1,000 New Yorkers who help to keep our city parks clean are expected to lose their jobs. This is one of the many impacts of budget cuts announced last month.
This migrant crisis is far from over, and just last week, more than 3,800 migrants arrived here in the city.
That's a big number.
So videos of prepared meals being thrown away, those are incredibly disturbing for several reasons. First, those meals were supposed to go to asylum seekers, many of whom have come to New York City by bus from the southern border, but for some reason they never made it. They went into the garbage instead. Perhaps the meals were inedible, or maybe the recipients just didn't want them, or maybe they were never distributed in the first place. We're gonna figure that out, but there's another reason this is disturbing, and that's because you've got 1.2 million New Yorkers right now who are struggling to feed themselves and their families, and the food pantries that they rely on are running out of resources. Yet there's food in the trash at the exact same time, which also doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when the mayor is making massive cuts to the fire department, the police department, and school programs, and funding to charities that help feed hungry people living in New York. And the reason these cuts are happening is because the city is struggling financially under the weight of an asylum crisis and a mass epidemic of homelessness. There are over 100,000 people right now living in the city's shelter system, and it's at capacity.
And just last week, more than 3,800 migrants arrived here in the city. More than 150,000 migrants have passed through New York City's shelter system since last spring, with more than 67,000 migrants currently in the city's care.
That's an incredible amount of people, and most folks are arriving here at this bus terminal in Midtown. 3,800 people a week? That's almost 16,000 people a month coming to America seeking asylum. And not only are the folks arriving here in need of food, so are many New Yorkers. And that's why the idea of food being thrown away is pretty crazy, especially when it's thousands of dollars a day. It doesn't make any sense until you start digging.
Hotel, we are in hotel.
So here we are at the Row Hotel, and videos have come out from whistleblowers of thousands of dollars of food that looked perfectly good being thrown away at this very same building.
Why
Bags and bags of food being thrown away. This is all.
This is insane.
that
Doesn't
is going
make any
waste.
sense.
This is insane. This is fresh.
Fresh
This is
food
good food.
being thrown away.
This
and
looks
people are
really bad for a
starving.
whole bunch of reasons. But first, it's important to understand that the Row Hotel is a 1,300-room former luxury hotel, 44th Street, 8th Avenue, right by Times Square. It opened in 1928, which makes it 96 years old. But around 2020, it went bankrupt. And in 2022, the owners of the hotel signed a contract with the city to turn this building into an emergency shelter. But part of running the hotel as a shelter means feeding those inside. And although this part of Midtown is surrounded by places that can prepare food, they didn't use local businesses to prepare food for the people they need to feed. No, they got the food somewhere else. And although on the surface reports of wasted food make it seem like the people inside the hotel were ungrateful, for the free meals there's potentially something else going on here. According to the New York Times, the meals that were thrown away are from a medical services company called .go. And apparently this same contractor used to provide viral tests when those were in high demand here in New York, and now they've switched over to providing asylum seeker services of various kinds. Apparently their contract with the city is worth $432 million, and there's some sort of investigation going on. And apparently this was a no-bid contract, which essentially means that the company being asked to provide the services was the only company being considered. So whatever price they came up with, it's kind of like take it or leave it. And according to the New York Times, the company's being investigated for the potential mistreatment of asylum seekers in its care. And the video the whistleblower took at this facility is from a 11 months ago, but this New York Times article, this is from about a week and a half ago, so the story is still taking place. It's an ongoing issue. And what's crazy is the amount of money wasted food winding up in the trash is costing the city. The city's contract with DocGo has the meals pegged at $11 each, and from October 22nd to November 10th, over 70,000 meals provided by this company were thrown away, which means that $776,000 worth of resources that could have helped somebody, anybody, even just one person here in New York, helped nobody. It ended up in one of these things. And since the amount of wasted food is almost $40,000 a day, after 30 days you're looking at over $1 million in wasted meals.
Asylum seekers are sharing their side of the story, explaining why they're not eating the food.
Residents here point to pasta covered in grease and meatballs still frozen in the middle. They're pushing back today after shelter staff told the New York Post they were wasting tax dollars.
Okay, for $11 each, I think people could expect better quality than what appeared in that video. And if that's what they're serving people, no wonder folks are complaining. Maybe the quality's just inconsistent. The whistleblowers videos shows perfectly good meals in the trash. These videos show low quality, partially defrosted, airplane-style TV dinners that I don't think anybody wants to eat. But it's also recently come to light that not every meal the city pays for gets eaten. And that's because the city is estimating how many meals they need and buying them ahead of time. And that's why some of what doesn't get eaten ends up in the trash either way. But the people who are being served the food, they're the ones saying that it's the quality. It's not the fact that it was available or not.
This mom of two says sometimes the food smells bad, rotten, and every time the children eat the food like that, they get food poisoning.
Now, what I'm not too sure about is why people would say the food is terrible and claim that it's making them sick if it's not. What could possibly be the end game to that? But if you've ever eaten somewhere and gotten food poisoning, your desire to go back to that place is not at all on the table. You're probably not going back. You don't want to take any chances. That's not where I ate. I actually ate at Chipotle. I haven't been back since. And if people were going from this hotel's cafeteria straight to the hospital, it's no surprise that folks are being a little extra careful. And the New York Times also reports this company lowered their meal prices to around $7 from $11. How they were able to make those price reductions isn't mentioned, but some critics say that because the company's trying to save money and so is the city, this could be part of the issue. And what's crazy is you can get meals right now for $11 each from a company like Factor, and these are like TV dinners. I'd be willing to bet that these all get eaten and not thrown away. Either way, some food waste is bound to happen because everybody here is getting pretty much the same thing, or at least the options they are getting are somewhat limited. But what's crazy is these foods, they're containerized in little packages, which could easily be placed in an outdoor community-style fridge. There's hundreds of these in New York City. Anyone can just walk up and take what's inside if they want.
So
here's the nonprofit website where you can track them. Look, there's one right here down the street over on 10th Avenue. We're on 8th Avenue. And community fridges, they sprang up during 2020, and at first they were full of food. But now that people have returned to work and inflation's pretty high, there's less resources to go around, and a lot of them are empty. It's very sad. But it could be that the city is bound by health regulations that forbid them from doing this. But even if that is the case at a facility like this, one thing is for certain, which is that while there may be excess food in the city's shelters, local pantries and distribution centers that rely on city funding can't say the same thing. I don't see it, but according to Google Maps, there's a food pantry that operates out of this church. And many pantries like this get some of their funding from donations and also some of their funding from the city. And sadly, since the city is cutting its budget, the same amount of resources just aren't there anymore.
Leslie Davis is a mother of 5. For 4 years, she's been getting fresh meals and food packages at the pantry. But recently, she says the amount of food she's receiving is a lot less, and so are the amount of times.
Now, sadly, hunger-related problems in New York City have been going on for quite a long time. This is nothing new. It seems like every year New York gets less and less affordable, and last year the monthly rent for an apartment peaked at $5,600 a month. And on top of that, a recent study shows that 1 out of every 3 New Yorkers spends 50% of their income on rent, which, as you can imagine, doesn't leave a whole lot of extra room for things like groceries. And since 2019, pantries in the city have seen a 60% increase in visitors, which means that even before the asylum crisis started, there was already a huge need for New Yorkers, and now the city's cutting back on funding for places like this.
But in July, that budget was slashed, cutting them out of $950,000 each year after After pressuring some state officials, they say they were able to get back $300,000 per year.
That's crazy. So the Bronx Pantry in this video, they were going to lose $1 million in resources, and they had to fight to get a third of that back. Less staff at a pantry might mean reduced hours. Maybe they're not open every day. And some pantries have prep kitchens. Less staff could mean less people preparing food, less people assisting guests. And sadly, fewer resources also affects what pantries have to give out to the people who need it.
They've had to cut the amount of fresh produce they've given out to their clients, and they're now heavily relying on canned foods to get the job done.
We used to be able to give out gallons of milk. Now we'll give out a quart.
Hansen says the demand for food is becoming even greater in the borough.
What's really sad is that so many people who've been struggling for so long now have to do with even less. It's a very sad situation for everybody. The asylum seekers, needy New Yorkers, the whole thing is just awful. But on the other hand, it is encouraging to see local pantries still managing to make do even with less. And having food to give out, even if it's food in a can, is still way better than the alternative. But what's crazy is one food distribution network has too much and others have too little, and they're both down the street from each other, or at least in the same city. And also the pre-packaged $11 meals that come from that medical service company, those are 3 times as expensive as what it takes one local pantry to feed one person every day, 5 days a week.
Give us more story, guys. Come on. About that.
This is the St. Luke's Soup Kitchen, and it's one of several really well-run soup kitchens that have been serving the local community here in New York for a long time. And although I've never volunteered here, I have volunteered at the Holy Apostles Soup Kitchen, which is about 10 blocks south of here. Look at how well-run these places are. This is the Holy Apostles website. Look at that. $30 will feed somebody every day, 5 days a week. And $150 provides a family of 4 with 4 meals a week. St. Luke's, they're open twice a week, 300 meals a day, and they do meals to go if people need that. A lot of these places are buffet style operated. This is video footage from the New York Times inside the Holy Apostles. And instead of everyone getting the same thing in a microwavable container, guests here have a choice. Plus, they can go through the buffet line as many times as they feel necessary. And these seem to be much more efficiently run than the city's operation with this contract where the meals are $11 per person, and that's $33 a day, when at a place like this, that money will go a lot further. Now, I understand that the shelter system and a soup kitchen are not the same thing. They've got different goals in mind, but wasted resources, that's a huge problem, and I don't think that's happening here to the same extent. And when you think about it, $39,000 of wasted food a day, that's $195,000 of wasted food a week. And at some of these privately run places, that same amount of money would feed 6,500 people a week. And have you ever heard the term haste makes waste? Well, if the city signed their food distribution agreement with that company as quickly as they could because there's an emergency situation, it makes sense that that contract could be part of the problem. And that doing things differently would have kept food out of the trash.
Yeah. So we have 2 stories.
So ever since the story began, every single accusation of every type of problem possible has been thrown at the whole system that feeds people who don't have anything. Some people are saying the hastily agreed to emergency food services contract and the fact that the company involved is a medical services company, not a restaurant. People are pointing to things like that as to why the meal experience isn't as good as it probably could be at $11 a pop, heck, even $8 a pop. But the city of New York does not have a lot of options. And the alternative is you've got thousands of people coming here every single week seeking shelter in New York. And I guess the city could have taken their time to figure out who was the absolute best food provider possible. But then the complaints would be that we've got people who are on the streets starving, and the city has all this money and all these resources and they're not using any of it. They're taking their time. I think that's what we would be hearing instead. It's a tough spot, tough situation. Is the company that's providing the meals in their generous contract the issue? And another question is, if people aren't eating the meals that are prepared and delivered to the shelters for free, they must have another option. And does that mean the city should be doing more to promote people's individual decision making when it comes to what they eat? How much chicken over rice? $10, thank you. It might not be perfect, but there's no way that's going to be worse than what comes in a microwavable TV dinner pouch. New York is full of restaurants. Maybe instead of giving all this money to one food provider, why don't we just give it to the folks who are here and need something to eat and let them spend it how they deem fit? These are massive questions. I don't know if I have the answers personally. What do you think? Leave a comment. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.
Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.